So talking about negotiating the contract, keep in mind that the contract that is in front of you when the scope of work is defined and where the actual contract price is developed and the specifications for what the actual scope of work is the result of all the time in pre-contract by the contractor and their vendor partners and the designers and everything, building this custom package of services for you. And the verbiage of the contract is likely something that has been used dozens, if not 100 plus times with relatively no change throughout the years. And so negotiating the contract is primarily negotiating what the scope of work it includes and what the price is for that scope of work. And that being said, I think that clients have this belief that there is not able to be an open discussion about this, or that they don't like the bottom line number of what it costs, but are unwilling to remove scope of work. We use very standardized pricing. We have specific labor rates. We understand what it takes to demo and reframe and all the different things that go on in this step, and we rely on our vendor partners and trade partners to help us with that. And so usually the negotiating seems to be how can they get more and pay less, or get the same amount and pay less. And usually that's not possible. And that's kind of back to that uncommon sense versus common sense. That being said, it is very important, and one of the reasons why we present the contract in person is to review it and to understand it, understand the responsibilities the contractor has in that contract, but then understand the responsibilities of you, the client, to the contractor. We've had in the past clients sign it and then want to negotiate payment terms when we're in the middle of the job, or even when we have spent more money on their job than they've paid us. And that doesn't make for a good relationship, especially in the 11th hour of the project, when you want the project done, when you want the time, essentially you want it done faster, but you don't want to pay. And it's why we have this module and we talk about it. So let's understand the payment terms. Let's understand that why. Generally, Transform does 5 payments in 20% increments throughout the project. And if it's an over $100,000 job, and then if it's under $100,000 job, we typically do a 50% and then a 50% payments, just because it becomes difficult to do 5 smaller payments throughout the stuff. But anyway, that being said, it's very important to work through those issues before signing, to understand what is in there, understand the payment terms. Specifically, we set those terms up because we are not a bank. We are essentially taking your money, holding it in trust, and dispersing it for your benefit over that. And when clients expect or want Transform to leverage their existing operating capital and continue to pay people to work on their home without paying for those services up front or promptly upon their being completed, it becomes a somewhat toxic environment, and it compromises our ability to complete the job swiftly. And that's frankly where a lot of the issues can result, is the client will make the first payment, second payment right away, and then there'll be some problems along the way. They maybe not even voice those to the contractor, but then there can be this compromise of trust and at least a perceived compromise of trust. And sometimes we'll have to bring the clients in, say, what's going on? And one particular time I can think of is the client was saying, well, we have friends of ours who paid the contractor, and the contractor wasn't paying any of the subcontractors. And then the subcontractors were all coming to them and asking for payment direct from the client. And essentially, I could tell that was going on. I brought them in and said, what's going on? And they said, well, we just, they actually called my electrician and we're like, have you been paid yet? And he said, no, but he hadn't billed me yet, which is, I told him, I said, look, if the electrician hasn't sent me an invoice for your job, how am I able to pay him? And that we're going to get it taken care of. And back to that whole thing that we are working locally in the community. We are intending to be here for generations. We are intending to run into each other, our families to see each other. And I'm in it with you guys. We're going to get to the finish line. We're going to make this happen. We are going to provide you this near perfect product that we've talked about from the very beginning. Let's stay in this. Let's get going. And you could just see that breath, that relief. And so that other people having nightmare stories and other people starting to say certain things about the project and letting that kind of come in your mindset, not talking to the contractor about it, not being open about it, can really poison a job and can, when we go to the contract wording and we're splitting hairs about it, both parties are kind of at mutually assured destruction, if you will. So it's really good to understand the contract, but ultimately the relationship between the client and the contractor and that ability to foster goodwill and trust between the two parties is going to be the most important. Open communication, understanding where everybody is, understanding the contractor needs to have the money to be able to pay the subcontractors, understanding the difficulties of actually performing the work, which we will get to in the coming modules. But anyway, hopefully that is a little bit helpful about the contract and understanding those and what the obligations are, but also to understand that the ultimate desire in these jobs is to have a open, honest, trustworthy, goodwill relationship between the contractor and the client. And that's how we get these projects done as fast as possible, and you get to enjoy your space for many, many years.